Good morning, my name is Specialist Childs, and this class is on the importance of diversity. This briefing is unclassified, and I would like to thank Staff Sergeant Ryder for attending. So on today's agenda, we'll be talking through the introduction, we'll define diversity, talk about the Army Diversity Office, the advantages diversity presents, the effects it has on our unit, and then summarize everything in a conclusion. So when I think of diversity, the first thing I think about is my hometown. I've been in the military for almost 4 years now, and I've never met anyone from my hometown. If you look at your active duty platoon, there's rarely more than 3 or 4 people in that platoon that are from the same state, let alone the same city in that state. And I want you to think about your best friend, a person that you're always looking forward to hanging out with, inside or outside of work. Are they from the same state as you? Are they the same gender, race, age? Probably not. And this all ties into diversity. So the Army defines diversity as the different attributes, experiences, and backgrounds of our soldiers, civilians, and family members that further enhance our global capabilities and contribute to an adaptive, culturally astute Army. So it's important to note in that definition that they talk about things like experiences, backgrounds, and they also mention a culturally astute force. So there's 2 different, essentially, subsections of diversity. There's cultural diversity and then there's ethnic diversity. So ethnic diversity is what you see. It's the gender, race, it's different languages that are spoken. But cultural diversity is things that aren't so obvious. For example, I'm from Ohio, and so when I ask for a carbonated beverage, I tend to say the word pop, and a lot of people think that's crazy because they call it soda. Or people from New England call the water fountain a bubbler. Those are perfect examples of cultural diversity, and if you incorporate that into the overall definition of diversity, the Army is a lot more diverse than people realize. Diversity is such an important issue in the Army that the entire U.S. Army created the Army Diversity Office as a place to manage and create vision statements for how the Army is going to handle their diversity. So in the mission statement from the ADO and the vision statement, they both have the phrase National Leader in Diversity and National Leader in Embracing Strengths of Diverse People. This brings me to the other point that civilians hold the Army to a higher standard as it is already. People think of soldiers, they think of trustworthy, they think of service, courage, bravery. And so why shouldn't people look at the Army and think, wow, that's a really diverse force, and because of their diversity, they're doing incredible things for this country. And that's the whole purpose behind the Army Diversity Office. So onto the advantages of diversity, and this is something that the ADO mentions. Soldiers that feel valued and well represented are more likely to perform better and stay in the Army longer. I know in my personal experience, my battalion command sergeant major, brigade command sergeant major, and division command sergeant major are all African American gentlemen. And the African American soldiers that are in my unit have mentioned on numerous occasions how much they value the fact that their battalion and brigade and command and division command sergeant majors are the same minority as them, because it gives them a sense of pride and accomplishment. And even though they're the minority, it still proves to them that through hard work and dedication that the Army doesn't not reward them based on their race. Another big advantage is the different perspectives that diversity brings about. I'm sure most of us have been in some type of a meeting with more than one person, and your platoon sergeant or your section leader is going over a plan and he asks for any ideas. The reason he asks for any ideas from a group of people is because every single person in that group has a different point of view and a different perspective. Those different points of view and perspective are fueled by your background and your experiences in that topic. And that all ties back into having a very diverse force. In times like these in our country, it is incredibly important that we understand the powerful effects that diversity can have. And if we can understand diversity better in our units, then we can help provide the better example for the nation as a whole. So as I mentioned earlier, in the vision and mission statement from the Army Diversity Office, they use the term or the phrase, operate with a culturally astute force. And this is a big part of what we do in the military, because 90% of us at some point are going to find ourselves overseas and have to assimilate ourselves into a different country's culture. And the best way to be proficient at that is to surround yourself constantly with different cultures. From my own personal experience, I know that through the Hispanic members in my platoon, I have tried new foods and experienced cultures that otherwise I never would have been accustomed to, and I'm very thankful that I've had those experiences. And then when we went over to Germany, it became a lot easier for me to just accept their culture and view it as a positive thing instead of a negative thing, because my platoon already has a bunch of diversity in it and I'm already accustomed to seeing that diversity. So one last note, diversity is all around us every single day. It just depends on how specific you want to get. I think a lack of diversity presents itself as a bigger problem, and it's more easily recognizable than diversity itself. The Army has never been more diverse than it is today. And so I think a lot of times we tend not to notice like truly how diverse it is. But imagine if you were a new soldier and you showed up to your platoon and your platoon sergeant and all the way up to your battalion commander were all white guys from Texas. That immediately set off red flags, because if you're not from Texas, then you feel like your opinion's not going to be heard. But chances are, when you show up to your new platoon, that your chain of command is going to be all different shapes, sizes, races, religions, genders. And so I think the Army already does an incredible job at diversity, and I think we can only get better from here. So in conclusion, there's two parts of diversity that are super important to remember. There's the ethnic part of diversity, which is like your race, gender, languages you speak. And then there's the cultural part of diversity, which takes a little bit longer to think about. Another example of cultural diversity is the tailgate game. I call it cornhole, but a lot of people call it bags. And so things like that, it's like based on where you grew up. It's a regional diversity, but it plays an equal part as ethnic diversity. Having a diverse Army is the best way possible to represent the entire nation as a whole. Especially in times like these, where there's a bunch of racial turmoil in the country, it's important that the Army showcases how powerful it is and how the diverse force lends itself to that superpower. One last note, it is incredibly important to maintain a diverse force for retention purposes, because soldiers of minority races that feel valued and well represented are more than likely going to re-enlist or work harder in order to achieve those spots. But if you have all white guys in the entire chain of command all the way up, and there's no females, no African Americans, no Hispanics, no Asians, then those minorities are going to feel like they're not represented and that they feel powerless. And they're more than likely just going to get out, and we're going to lose a bunch of minorities incoming. So the key takeaway from today is that diversity is important for a number of reasons, but the main thing is you should just take a step back and look at your platoon and truly realize how diverse it is. Even if your platoon doesn't have a bunch of ethnic diversity, it's going to have a lot of cultural diversity, I guarantee you. Are there any questions? This concludes my brief.